Awesome. All right. Well, we're here. This is the 74th Coffee with the Commissioner. It's 6:35 and we're going to get started. And glad everyone got up early for this morning. We're going to take a deep dive today about our budgeting process. Yesterday, we had our first budget workshop. Today, we'll finish up our second. And we have the pleasure this morning of having our Director of Budgeting here, Stefan Hall. He and I are going to talk a lot about the budget. We've been talking a lot about the budget over the last several months, and it's been a long process, but we're getting to a point where after today's meeting, I think the public will have a good general idea of kind of where we're going this year with our budgeting process. And of course, in about 60 days from now in September, we'll do our final budget hearing, at which point we would welcome citizens to come to our meeting and provide their input. Of course, today and yesterday's meeting are workshops for the board members and staff to discuss the budget. But and also, of course, we have Eric Gilmore, our Director of Public Safety, is here this morning. So Wes Marino regrets to let us know that he couldn't make it this morning. So we won't be having a big county update this morning. So we'll get him back next month. But so it'll just be the three of us, and we'll go ahead and get started with Eric Gilmore. He is the Director of Public Safety, and there's a lot going on in public safety. In fact, we discussed a little bit yesterday during the departmental section of the budget workshop about a direction that he's going with fire and the replacement cycle. Eric, tell us about that. That's a pretty profound development that we're coming to a point where we're going to have a defined replacement cycle for our fire apparatus and equipment. Tell us about that.
Yes, sir. So Jason Catcherbone, our fire chief, been working with him. He's come up with a plan that by 2032, we should have our full fleet absolutely replaced. And in doing so, it's a heavy lift on the front end because we have a lot of frontline apparatus, a lot of repair and maintenance going on that they go down. But, and the price of apparatus nowadays, we're looking at aerials. A ladder truck costs $1.2 million. Engines that used to cost $400,000, $500,000 back in the day. And when I say back in the day, I'm talking about 5 years ago. So It's really not back in the day.
Not that long ago.
They're running anywhere from $750,000 to $800,000 now with a build time of 2 years out. Last September, the board approved the purchase of 3 custom apparatus for Escambia County, rescue squad or a squad, an engine, and an aerial. So we do have 3 pieces of apparatus that we have ordered last September, and we'll probably start seeing those pieces of our apparatus come in starting in hopefully November, December, January. So over a year since we placed our order for those pieces of apparatus. So, and build times have just gotten more absorbent. Now the board also approved 3 additional engines. So we have 6 pieces of apparatus on order right now. And the 3 engines that we were looking at, they were what we call demos, which means the company had already pre-built those things out, prefabbed them, and we're out there, rolling them around the country, showing them off is what they were. So we got our hands on those 3 apparatuses. As of the week before last, Chief Catcherbone was down at E1 in Ocala, and he had pictures of one of the trucks that was in there. All they had to do was put the stenciling, the name on the side of the truck, and we should see that truck and another truck roll into Escambia County, hopefully before the end of this month is what we're anticipating. So we'll see 2 trucks. So build times have just gotten absorbent. It's crazy on the build times of these apparatus and the price of these apparatus. So when we look at what we need now, of course, we need additional aerials, ladder trucks in the areas we're getting more apartment complexes. You just go down 9 Mile Road and head to the west, right, and you start seeing all the complexes building up out there. So it is a 70, or in 2032, it is a plan where we was asking for $7 million on year 1 and 2, $4 million on year 3. Jason's got it broke down, and he's also looking at lease programs. So we don't do an outright purchase; we look at leases. And because of the 2-year build time, we're looking at what we can get right now. We're actually looking at demos as well. So we look forward to meeting with you, Commissioner Burgash, and letting you laying it all out exactly what we're talking about and the options that we have because. A lot of people aren't, there's manufacturers out there. There's KME, there's Suffin, there's E1, there's Pierce. There's all kind of apparatus manufacturers out there. But what we have to look at is who can give us service locally. Mm-hmm. So, you got Suffin, which is a big provider, but they don't have a shop locally. So when one of our E1s go down for warranty work or something's wrong with it that can be fixed warranty wise, we do have a shop right here in the Panhandle that we can send it to. So when we look at the manufacturers, we're looking at, can you provide us our service? Do you have a maintenance shop nearby, or do you have an agreement? How far do we have to go to get it fixed? If
Right.
something, that those play a big role in what the vendors and how we look at what we're purchasing, because it just makes sense to try to purchase from somewhere who's got a shop locally. So not to say that we're not looking at those numbers. I mean, because 2 years is a long time, and trying to find a truck, we're just trying to, replace the fleet and find a truck. So that's the issues that we've been having due to COVID nowadays. So.
Well, let me ask you, we had purchased some equipment, I want to say 2 years ago, maybe 2.5 years ago. And one of the trucks was consistent problems from day one, almost to the point where it was a lemon. Did we ever get that all sorted out? And what's the status of that? You know which one I'm talking about?
I know exactly which one you're talking about. And now that you jinxed me, knock on wood, it's been operating like it's supposed to. We felt like on the front end that we were not getting the level of service, and you're absolutely right that we should have. That there was some electronic gremlins in the right. apparatus that was giving us fits. And I think at one point the truck was offline more than it was working. And that's a shame for a brand new piece of apparatus. Now, we didn't get a replacement, but the company did come in and went through it. They didn't do a full rip out and replace, but they did fix. Right now, the apparatus is up and running. And it wasn't just that one. There was another one that was having similar problems as well. So as of right now, the truck is operating, and I hope we don't have anything go down with it. But they did get it resolved to our satisfaction, that it is on the front line and it is working like it's supposed to at this point in time.
Fantastic. So once we get to that level, the replacement cycle, we talked about it's going to be a 7-year cycle. So that
2032 is the final, but it's going to be an aggressive lift in the first 7 years. As I said, we're looking at $7 million first year, $6 million the second year, $4 million the third year. So when we get the higher end equipment, we have brush trucks, we have staff vehicles, we have tankers. So when we get the engines that cost the most, and the aerials primarily is what costs the most. When we get those replaced on the front end, then our costs do go down a little bit, because we're looking at other apparatus now that doesn't cost that absorbent amount. A tanker is not going to run as much as an engine is. So those, we'll start replacing those. We've got tankers in the north end of the county that have been in service since 1996, and they're frontline pieces of apparatus. We do have a couple of tankers down here in the south end that have been recently purchased. So we're, looking at what we need on the front end, and then replacing what the other stuff that we need to go hit that's not going to cost as much. And then we'll start seeing a little bit of a climb toward the end again, because we'll be in that 5-year window toward the end of that time cycle. But yes, that's what we're looking at doing.
Okay, cool. Well, let's switch gears over to EMS. As you know, we had that issue out in Perdido Key in my district, and you and I talked about that. And, the eventual goal is to roll how many trucks during the day and how many trucks at night. Because one of the big topics that we see online is people love to listen into the radio and then do a running commentary about how many calls are being held. And so I thought it was an interesting conversation that we had. So let's talk a little bit about that. So in a perfect world right now, how many trucks per day would we like to be putting on the road?
We would like to have 20 in the daytime,
20
to
on
be
the
honest
road.
with you.
Okay.
We try to have 15 on the day during the day. Sometimes crew members come in, they get sick or something happens and they leave. Sure. And we go down to 12 trucks is where we absolutely have to have on the road. And that's what we try to strive to have on the road countywide during the daytime. And then at night, we'd like to go to 12 trucks at night. We feel 12 trucks will get us handle the call load that we need, but we try to keep it around 10 trucks at night. Sometimes we do drop to 9, but 10 trucks, and that's not included the interfacility trucks. So
right.
The interfacility truck, now they do have parameters, and they're dedicated to transfers inside facilities. Sure. But if there's a cardiac arrest or a mass casualty, it does have rules that if there's a life-saving event going on, that they need to roll to, they pull off and they will go to it. Talking about some of those holding calls, as we said before, we do prioritize. We prioritize what the calls are. Delta level call gets the first priority. At echo level, most definitely, an echo level is a known cardiac arrest that's witnessed right now.
Sure.
So that they do maneuver those pieces of apparatus, and there's resources around to meet the need of the higher acuity calls at the time. So we do that as well. But sometimes when you hear the radio and you hear, EMS holding a call, sometimes those calls, and here lately, like last week, we had 2 calls being held, and I looked at the board and seeing what we were holding. They were facility transfers. So don't get those mixed up from interfacilities.
Sure.
Facility transfer and interfacility are two different things. A facility transfer is you're at a nursing home, and not you, Commissioner Burgos,
Sure.
just hypothetically.
Not yet, I hope.
You're at a nursing home, and you have a patient in a nursing home that's having a seizure or something like that. Well, that doesn't go to the facility trucks. That's not an interfacility. That is a static 911 call that's happening right now that goes to the 911 side, and the truck gets pulled up. But there's staff there and everything. Now we'll get these these facility calls of a headache at a nursing home or something like that, which is a 911 call, but it's still a low acuity. It's a headache. There's staff there with that patient at that time.
Sure.
So it does take a little bit lower priority because there's medical staff there at a assisted living facility or a nursing home that can help with that patient until we can get there and transport while we handle all the Delta level calls. The situation at Perdita Key was unfortunate. It was one of those, it's a rarity, but it does happen. We get those perfect storms where we had 2 crew members, one go home sick, one with a personal issue. So we dropped 2 trucks right there. And during that window, that time frame, we were trying to bring additional staff on and do a call out. And we was getting them in. And one truck did hold over from the previous shift to help us out. And then during that, we had 2 overdoses going on, 2 cardiac arrests going on, a gunshot. So those are higher acuity calls that we've got to send those trucks to get the immediate need to the community. So it was just that situation. Now, our dispatchers do have the authority we got protocols that we typically don't send fire to a alpha level call. But the Key being so far out there, sometimes it takes a while for an ambulance to get out there in that side of town. But the dispatchers do have the authority to override and go, look, this makes sense to send fire right now to get some help out there, a first response type thing, and get some help out there. And that's what we were looking at. Do we need to update that protocol? Do we need to look at the time distance travel? And that's what we're working on right now to make sure that we get some help out there in a timely fashion. The call was a fainting call, which alpha level on our end is what it gets queued as. So that's why it took back seat to all the Delta calls going at the time, and then dropping 2 crew members, which is unfortunate. And, it happens from time to time, but we just can't predict when. So
let me ask you, do we have, it's my understanding we actually had a lifeguard truck do a cardiac arrest a week back when we didn't have enough people. Don't we have an agreement if we really get overwhelmed that we can bring them in? Do we have a surge capacity with a contracted ambulance service?
We do. It's a mutual aid agreement is what it is. So and it's vice versa. If they need help over there, we send a truck over there. I will tell you, during the Blue Angels Air Show, they had 2 lifeguard trucks just off the island over in Gulf Breeze. Sure. And Saturday and Friday, Friday and Saturday, they utilized lifeguard for all the heat related incidences that we were having, and lifeguard came over and transported. So from time to time, if you think about Santa Rosa County and lifeguard, we had the 2 trauma centers here in Escambia County.
Right.
So they're transporting over here quite frequently. If they're not going to Santa Rosa Medical or Baptist and Gulf Breeze or Jay, they're coming over here to our hospital system. So if they're just hanging out and we know that they're hanging out and we need a little bit of help, then we'll ask them, do you have time or are you available to help out? And most of the time they do. They help out. Now, sometimes they're busy as we are, and they say we can't offer assistance. And especially like the extreme north end of the county or the extreme west end of the county where we've got AMR running over toward in Baldwin County. But we do, it's a mutual aid agreement that we do offer resources back and forth across the counties to help each other out.
And do they cherry pick the calls? Or if you say, look, I got an alpha level fainting call, will you take it? I mean, do they say, no, we can't? Or, I mean, do they get any kind of discretion?
They do. So what we do is we call and ask, are you available for this call? And either they accept or they don't. So whether they're cherry picking or not, maybe they're busy and they need to turn and burn and get back to their county because they are over here. Or but a situation arises where they've got a call on the board that they see over in Santa Rosa Dispatch and they need to get that unit back over. But they do have the prerogative to go, no, we don't have resources available. And sometimes that happens as well. They've called us and we go, I'm sorry, we don't have available resources, and vice versa. So it happens, both systems kind of stay busy a little bit, Santa Rosa and Escambia, but it is their prerogative to decide if they can free one unit up to help us out and vice versa. We do the same with them.
Okay. Well, I think that's good that we put that information out there so people know what's going on. Because, you get some people that have limited information or frankly, they got an axe to grind and they put stuff online and then it just kind of muddies the waters and it portrays us as if we don't care about someone who's had a medical issue. But we have trained people on the dispatch lines, and I think part of what they do, Eric, is don't they kind of talk to someone and figure out, is this really something where we need to roll the ambulance and the fire truck, or is this someone who's got indigestion? I mean, don't they kind of do that on the front end? Isn't that part of what they do?
They do triage. Our dispatchers do a pro QA, which they go down a list of questions and they try to figure out your exact calls. And so they do a list of questions that they go down. I'm excited that we're working on telemedicine right now. If we can get telemedicine up, then that would help us out tremendously, because then we can take a tablet and we can take a QRV and we can put a person in a vehicle. And if it's a real, we get headache calls, alpha level headache calls quite frequently. We get sick calls, which is just, I don't feel good. I feel nauseated. They call the 911 system for an alpha sick level call. And those are the calls that back up, and there's little nitpicky calls that back up and hold us up. We can put somebody in a SUV. They can run out there. That way we don't have to send an ambulance and tie an ambulance up for a true Delta level cardiac arrest, seizure, or something like that. Sure. And then go with an iPad and go, what do you have today? What's going on? How can I help you? And kind of triage them on site. And then if they need to see a doctor, then we pull up the doctor on the iPad and they converse with the doctor right there. And if he needs to write a script, he can write a script to their local pharmacy or whatever they use. And we can try to, that's what we're trying to get to unburden the 911 system for all the lower level acuity calls that really don't need a transport by ambulance. You and I, if I feel bad or I feel sick, I'm going to hop in my truck or my vehicle and I'm going to go to the Minute Clinic or something like that and take care of it. But a lot of people don't. They call 911 or they don't have somebody, unfortunately. So by doing this, we're hoping that we can unburden the 911 system by having a telemedicine approach. And we're working vigorously toward getting that going so we can help. It'll help relieve the system a little bit.
No, that would be fantastic. Are there other counties that are doing that already and have implemented? Because that seems like that could really untie your hands on a lot of these alpha level calls.
There are some counties, South Florida, and there's some counties nationwide that are doing this. It's not a big program right now, but we're learning lessons learned from other counties right now and talking to those. And but some of that grant money that we're getting for that's coming through DCF is what we're going to utilize in conjunction with Community Health of Northwest Florida. Those guys are a tremendous partner out there and been doing a good job. So Sandra Smiley and those guys, and then Chief Torcell has been meeting with the group and Department of Health and trying to get this off the ground. So we're excited. We don't have the timeline just yet. We do know that the state is ready to release the funds, and as soon as we do that, of course, we got to bring it to the board for you guys to accept, and then we'll know get a better timeline and when we can roll this out.
All right, and then quick question on the SAFER grant. Where do we stand on that?
Stefan? I think he's smiling. I think we're going to cut that because I don't think it's in the budget. I don't think it's fiscally responsible to be doing that right now at this point in time.
Okay. All right. Good enough. Yeah.
Small confirms it, right, Stefan?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
All right. Yeah. Because I know in the past, the board in the past in 2009, I think Stefan said also, yeah, we can't afford to do that, take on that liability. So that doesn't mean we can't add more staff. I mean, we're adding almost $6 million to the fire budget this year, by the way, without raising taxes, without raising the MSBU. We're doing that. And 5.8, is that what it is, Stefan, that we're adding to fire over and above the MSBU?
Yes, sir. That's correct.
So that should allow you to hire a lot of additional firefighters for that kind of money. But the final thing I want to talk, you talked a little bit about overdoses, and that's really something that's blowing up. And Chief Torcell has been attending the mental health task force meetings, and he the last one that they had, I sent Debbie and Caleb from my office, and just heard a lot about the information that he put out. So it's 1,024 overdoses in Escambia County this year that EMS has had to go deal with, 5.6 per day in this county. To me, that's just astonishing. And it just seems to me like it's just a silent epidemic. Like the media doesn't talk about it. I mean, we heard about Gadsden County. They had 9 overdose deaths in one day, which is a big deal. It's a very tiny little county outside of Tallahassee, but Escambia County right now, tell us how that's impacting our EMS units, this fentanyl crisis.
Well, I mean, an overdose is a senseless call, honestly. I mean, it's a preventable call. So when we have these overdoses on the board, it does detract from your 911 system for the person who's having a cardiac arrest, a seizure, a motor vehicle accident, a trauma alert. So those, preventable overdoses pull a unit And then when we're on 3 overdoses, and then you come out, we have 14 trucks on the road, and those goes 3 just for senselessness. I mean, that does burden your system when we're a busy system to begin with. So I think we had this weekend, one of the paramedics was telling me he had 18 cardiac arrests in one day. And I think of those, 8 or 9 of those were overdoses, to be honest with you. So the, overdose induced cardiac arrest. So, we get busy, we stay busy with the overdoses. So those guys get out there. And the sad part is, and this is what we're trying to prevent and trying to get to the point where we can intervene. The sad part is we're seeing this, a lot of the same people over and over.
Right.
Right. I just Narcaned you 6 months ago. You didn't learn your lesson. And here I am Narcaned you again, taking away a resource, and we're back in the same situation. And those frequent flyers that we see over and over, it's really sad that we're at that point where we know the people that we're going to, and it does really burden the system for senseless overdose, to be honest with you.
Well, I know that this Thursday, I've spoken to the chairman of the school board, Kevin Adams, and in discussing what came out of the mental health task force and just the massive situation that we're seeing in the community. He and I talked about it, and he is putting that issue on the school board's workshop agenda Thursday. And so I just want to publicly thank you and Chief Torcell for agreeing to go in to the school board on Thursday morning for their workshop and just kind of tell this story. Because you've got students in middle school and high school. Sadly, I know as a 10-year school board member, there are drugs in the schools. Sadly, I mean, it's just a reality. But the drugs today are, they're being laced with this fentanyl. And so I think you got to make sure that everyone understands the risk and the danger associated with this. And I think it'll be a very, very good discussion with the school board. I'm happy that Chief Torcell is going to take time from his busy schedule to go over there and speak with him. But I certainly hope that the school board, I know that they have nurses in many schools and health techs and others, but I hope they have Narcan at the high schools. I hope they have it at the middle schools, because you don't know. I mean, kids think they're taking an oxy and it's full of Chinese fentanyl, because that's what's going on right now. So that's going to happen this Thursday. I appreciate you, Eric, sending the resource over there. And I look forward to hearing back from Kevin Adams on how that went. But yeah, it's scary stuff, this fentanyl.
No, absolutely. Like we're seeing, people who use marijuana, which is, to them, they've been doing it all this time. And then they get a laced batch of marijuana, and now they got fentanyl in the marijuana, have no idea. We've seen that quite frequently a lot as well.
Well, wait a minute. Whoa, that's interesting. So someone's smoking weed. They think, oh, it's just weed.
Right. And
it's laced with fentanyl in Escambia County?
That's correct. So to your point that you don't know, It is really to that point.
So you're smoking something, thinking you're going to get.
I've been doing this for years. And now it's laced with fentanyl. I had no idea. I'm serious. We're seeing that.
Does that induce, if you smoke it, does that induce an overdose? I mean, I guess it would, right?
It would. Absolutely would.
Wow. Unbelievable. Wow. So yeah. So this is good. This is good that he's going to go speak with the school board. People need to know. And gosh, I certainly hope that we don't have any issues in the schools. Let me ask you this. I know we keep the statistics, 5.6 overdoses per day that we're responding to on average. Do we keep stats on how many of them we save and how many of them, end up dying? I mean, out of 1,000, did we save half of them or most of them, all of them?
We don't keep that stat, but that is something that I can look into. Absolutely.
I'd like to know, the Health and Hope Clinic is the only free Narcan distributor in the area.
Right.
Prior to them winning a grant and distributing it, you had to go all the way to, I think, Walton County, I think was the closest place. But anyway, they've given out thousands of doses. They get it free, and they give it out to, they've given it out to the sheriff's office. They've given it out to groups, but they keep track of how many saves, and it's dozens and dozens of people that they've saved. They've given out 1,000 doses. I think that would be good information to keep, Eric. I mean, you just mentioned that we had frequent flyers. Okay, we saw you 6 months ago. We saved you, and we saved you again. So that leads me to believe that maybe, we're saving a good bit of these folks. But in speaking to Dr. Oleski, the medical examiner, she says that the overdose deaths in this community are just out of control. So that would be interesting to know. Can we start keeping track of that?
Well, I'll give it Chief Torcell, and we'll look at the board and see how we can do that. Yeah.
Yeah, that would be good to know. Well, I appreciate, Stefan, your patience. Boy, there was a lot of important stuff that we had to talk about for public safety, and Appreciate you, Eric. And so now we're gonna do a quick transition over to budgeting. I just had a couple questions for you, Stefan. A lot of people, online, they think it's a big secret, this budgeting. Oh, the Board of County Commissioners, it's a big secret thing. But all you have to do is go to our website, myescambia.com, click the budget on the upper left. There's a little budget icon. You click that, and then you click the 2022-2023 proposed budget, and you have everything we have. It's over 100 pages. It's interactive. It's a fantastic document. So I just want people to know that. Go there, watch the meeting, follow along. You can see everything we could see. The highlights of the budget for me this year: no tax rate increase. There's a lot of people in our ear saying, just raise the millage rate. They lowered it in 2006, just raise it. Never going to do it. Never going to do it. We grow the taxable base. We keep a static millage rate, and that's how we grow revenue. And the other thing is, we just talked about fire extensively. We've given those guys tremendous raises, and we didn't raise the fire MSBU or the taxes. So Stefan, to build a budget like what we're talking about yesterday and today in our workshops, when did the process start this year to get that budget put together? When does that start for the budget office?
Yes, sir. So normally that process is going to start in January. We start building personnel. That is our first step toward building any future budget. As you know, I didn't get here till February 28th, so we were running a little bit behind, and we also rebuilt the staffing here in the office, and unfortunately that took longer than expected. As you know, we've had some staffing challenges, here with Escambia County, but like I say, so we start the budget process usually at the end of January. We put out instructions and various information out to the departments that help them to build their budget, such as, we talk about the per gallon cost for fuel, which is a big deal that all of our agencies are experiencing right now, including our constitutional officers. If you've got vehicles rolling, fuel is affecting you. Certainly the economic conditions that we're experiencing personally, our government is certainly not immune to those same pressures and things. So increased costs there. Utilities are another big factor. We know Florida Power and Light has gone up on their rates, so do ours here at Escambia County. So ultimately going through that, we also put out a budget calendar with significant events, significant meetings, times when Eric and I and other departments would meet with the county administrator once those budgets are entered. OMB goes through an evaluation process. We evaluate what those asks are from our determination, what looks reasonable, what may not be quite as reasonable. Ultimately, we will have those conversations with our county administrator. Our county administrator is having conversations with you, Commissioner, and other commissioners to get that input. What direction would the board like to go with certain things? We try to incorporate as much of that into that proposed budget that you would see tomorrow or yesterday and today. Sorry. I'm a day behind, sorry. But outside of that, we project our revenue sources based on multiple years trends, what we see happening in the current years, anything that's happening at the Florida legislature, things that may impact the county's ability to fund necessary operations. We incorporate those items into the budget. The state also governs a lot of our budgetary process. Florida Statute 129 outlines a lot of the governance over the county in relation to our budget process. And again, we follow that process. Ultimately, we had workshops yesterday where we do go over those proposed budgets on an annual basis, get that input. Then we make a few more changes after that input. And certainly there are some things that the state continues to update and tell us that we continue to make some modifications. Ultimately, those final modifications are brought to our second budget public hearing this year. It's on September 20th. Our first budget public hearing is on September 6th. And as you mentioned earlier, those are times where the public can certainly provide some additional input for the board. They have an opportunity to speak. We adopt our MSBU role. Part of that MSBU role is the fire MSBU. As you said, Commissioner, we held that to the same rates. We did not increase the MSBU this year. and the additional need for fire, we funded from our ad valorem or property taxes or our general fund. After that, 30 days after that second budget public hearing, we are required to have our adopted budget document online and available for the public. So that is pretty much the end of that process.
No, that's interesting. So it looks like it. I mean, it's a solid 8 to 9 months of your year, starting in January all the way through September. So what do you guys do October, November, December? Just kidding.
So, well, we do get an opportunity to catch a little bit of a breath. But in that time, once we have our new budget uploaded, September is very busy for us. Again, we have those 2 public hearings. We also have to have our budget perfect to upload into our finance system. The next step that we're also simultaneously working in, we do a process which is called our rebudgets. So what that is, those are certain projects that the board has placed priority on, grants, various capital projects that are funded in the current year. However, for whatever reason, we didn't get those expenditures did not get completed. So we're going to bring those things forward into the new year, certain purchase orders, and maybe some things that may not be, but are still a departmental and board priority. We're going to bring those forward. Those usually come to the first meeting in November. So we would also be working on that. Then after that, I usually take a vacation in November because I'm here pretty much.
You're not allowed. You're not allowed. Well, that's great. Say, let me ask you. So, I was talking about the My Escambia site and the budget department, and then all the budget. I mean, for years and years, you can go back. I mean, like 15 years, and I mean, everything's there. And so, I'm just curious. One of the things that I always saw when I was on the school board that I thought was fascinating was we would do the same sort of process. We do a budget, have a budget hearing, and nobody showed up. They would show up if we didn't have the labor agreement done with the ESPs for the support of the school, but the citizens never showed up. And on the county commission, I do notice there's a lot more citizen participation, but not as much as there should be. But with the county and us putting everything online, is there any metrics about how many hits, say for instance, the 2022-23 proposed budget gets? Like how many times does it get clicked? The metrics, do we know like how much that's getting hit?
Commissioner, I am not aware of that, but I could certainly ask that question of our community and media relations folks and see if there's a way to capture that.
Yeah, I mean, it would be interesting to know because again, we've got $622 million budget. I mean, it's big, it's growing, and you would think that folks would put an interest. I know there's certain groups and certain people that have interests about certain things, but the average citizen, you would think, they pay taxes. Maybe they'd want to know. I'd love to know. I mean, if we could find out just how many clicks it gets, just something interesting to know. Now, this is one of my favorite topics when I talk about government budgeting. And yeah, you're smiling. So give us your thoughts on this trim notice rollback rate conundrum, because I've got my own thoughts on it. But people see, well, you're raising taxes. You had to advertise a tax increase. Explain, just give a quick primer on what that all means. You've done it for years.
So basically, that is part of that statute that I mentioned earlier. It is Florida Statute 129, and technically what is called our trim process. It's called truth and millage. So there's a whole group of folks down with the Florida Department of Revenue that run this particular division. And we can get in a lot of trouble if we don't do what we're supposed to do. So we follow the process, and we do a lot of communication with them to make sure that everything is spot on as it relates to those rollback rates and what the state deems as a property tax. So basically, even if you do not increase your millage rate, it is, again, that term, the rollback rate, where it would be the same, or basically it would be an adjusted millage rate to generate the same amount of revenue off of ad valorem property taxes as the prior year. So that is essentially what that rollback rate would be, which would mean you would adjust the millage rate down. So, but if you do not, even though the board holds it steady, our trim notice and the notices that we have to put in the paper basically say it is a tax increase, because it was the growth through the environment that the board ultimately supports here in the community, that makes it rich for investment, a good place to live. People want to come here, people want to build. So that environment, because the board is doing the right things, that investment keeps coming in and our values increase. Therefore, it generates additional property tax.
Okay, let me ask the question to Rick, because I think that's a horrible construct. I think it's terrible. I disregard it. I don't, people go, you're raising my taxes. I go, no, I'm not. I raise your taxes if I raise your rate. If I keep your rate steady, I'm not raising your taxes. And the garbage idea that, well, you can only get the same amount of revenue that you got last year. You got to keep lowering your millage rate. Don't people realize we have inflation, 40-year inflation? It's unbelievable. Our costs are going up, but yet in order to not be a guy raising taxes, we have to lower the millage and only get the same amount of revenue as we got last year. It's ridiculous. It's preposterous. I disavow it. I think it's horrible. No, my thing is, if you don't raise the rates, you're not raising taxes. You grow this economy. People want to move here, building houses. That's how you get more money to add more fire stations for Eric, more ambulances for Eric, raises for the police, for the sheriff's office. Otherwise, if you're stuck lowering your millage rate, playing the game, you never get any extra revenue. It's ridiculous. So I'd love to know which genius in the state developed that thing. I mean, it's just crazy. It's stupid and ridiculous. So yeah, so we have to advertise a tax increase, even though we've kept the rate steady. 6.617, how long has that been? It's been at least 12, 13, 14 years since we've done anything with the rate. And last time the board did anything, didn't they lower it, Stefan?
Yes, sir. So, well, technically the last time that we reduced our millage rate was when we took over the library system and we broke out the 0.359 millage rate.
Right.
From an actual slight, you would basically add the 6.6165 and the 0.359. That was the former millage rate after we dropped from the 8.7 millage rate. So, but then again, so we did that in order to fund our unified library system, where the city and the county combined, and the county basically provides governance and the operations of that.
Let me ask the question this way too, because I love this trim, this truth and millage, this whole thing, rollback rate. So if let's just say this year we've got a great year. We're up what, 14% in our tax roll. It's going to provide a lot of extra money for us to buy more equipment for the fire, provide big raises for corrections guards, do a lot of things that we need to do, keep up with this crazy Washington, D.C. inflation that we're dealing with, 40-year high inflation. So it's providing what, about 20 million extra this year, something like that?
Yes, sir. We've got about 20 million. And as I mentioned at the board meeting yesterday, so between the June 1st and the July 1st, the board actually got an additional 3.7 million from
fantastic.
That final valuation.
That's
but
great.
I'd also just like to say this, so Commissioner, when they talk about, the rollback rate, so if nothing changes and everything stayed the same, there was no growth, there was no need, like as Eric has said, for additional ambulances, because we got more residents moving here. We've got more condominiums, we got more apartment complexes, more houses, more everything. If everything stayed the same and nothing changed and there was no more construction and no more everything. And I think that might be an opportunity where the board maybe could say that, but then since none of that happened, it would basically generate about the same thing anyway. So, right. But unfortunately we're not in that type of environment. So, but because everything else is growing, the services that the county need to provide for the health and safety of our citizens are certainly massively important, and therefore necessitates, that additional revenue to support those operations.
Well, okay, so let's take a hypothetical. If this year we had entered a recession and the tax roll just tanked badly, and we were actually in a position where the 6.617 wouldn't even generate what we got the previous year, kind of what I went through on the school board in 08 when the tax roll took a dive, and if that happened, and we had to raise the millage rate, actually raise the rate just to get back to where we were the previous year, they would, under their crazy system, raising the millage rate just to get back to where we were, they would say that wasn't a tax increase under their construct. Isn't that right?
Well, technically, if you're going to adjust your millage, they would probably say that, yes, you did do a tax increase, because you would have gone basically to a lesser rate with that rollback rate.
No. But what I mean is if the tax roll had gone down significantly, right, and it was like a reverse situation where you got to raise your millage rate just to get back to where you were. My understanding is that would not be, because they did that in the school district. They said, we're raising the millage rate. I said, that's a tax increase. They said, no, it's not. It's not, because we got to raise it here to get the money we got last year and of course people were losing their houses. It was 08, 09, the recession. It was horrible. So my understanding is that under the state's construct, that wouldn't be considered a tax increase. Of course, I voted against that because it is a tax increase when you raise the rate. But anyway, I mean, luckily for us, we don't have to deal with that. I mean, our tax roll's going up. And
so that Commissioner, that would be one of those questions that I would have for Trim to confirm that what their interpretation of that is. What I can tell you is when it went down before, it was just a notice of budget hearing. You only have to say it if it's a tax increase. So basically, when it's flat or less, generally speaking, it's just going to be a notice of budget that's posted in our newspaper.
Interesting. Oh, and by the way, we don't post that in the newspaper anymore. We post it in the Escambia Sun Press. Isn't that right? Did we do that? The budget, everything, all in the Sun Press, right? Nothing for the News Journal. Is that right?
So I believe all of our normal advertisements for MSB ordinance and things like that, we go through Sun Press. Now, in my conversations with my staff, what happened last year, I believe it was advertised in the News Journal. So I'll have to ask some additional questions on that.
Yeah, we don't want to give them any money. All they do is beat us up. All right, well, that's an interesting discussion. I mean, again, back to reality, there's an income tax, 39% for the high earners. And if you make, $400,000, you pay 39%. But next year you make $600,000, you pay 39%. You're going to pay more in taxes, but that's not a tax increase. You keep the rate steady, you earn more money. And that's kind of the way I look at it too. I mean, if we're going to add more fire trucks, more fire stations, we're going to make a good deal for our sheriff's office, and pay there. You need more revenue. I mean, we don't live in some weird bubble where, inflation doesn't impact us. We all know we have trouble hiring. I hate the idea that people go, oh, they're raising our taxes because they didn't hit the rollback rate. It's like, buddy, we can't give raises if we don't do that. And it's not a tax increase. Anyway, I'm going to keep saying that till I'm out of office because it's ridiculous. But let's see, final budget question. So today we're gonna talk to outside agencies, and my understanding is a couple of them. I'm looking at the list right here, and this is also online too. People can go online; they can read all about the outside agencies, and many of these folks do things that are really statutorily mandated. Gulf Coast Kids House for abused children. Of course, we have Community Health Northwest does a lot of great work in the community. So a lot of these entities really do functions that are quasi-governmental. For lack of a better term, but they help our citizens. So every year we give a little over $1 million to these entities, but it looks like Brace dropped out this year. Be Ready Alliance coordinating. Yes, okay, so there's 95,000 we're going to save, and we've got several of these. Tell us about this. So we've got several of these that really help kids, and they've always enjoyed great support from the board. But this year with the Children's Trust, what's your thoughts on that? Are these opportunities for us to perhaps save some money there?
Absolutely, Commissioner. It's roughly about 50,000. There's also an additional, it's a new ask from another organization for $5,000. But if you take that ask plus the regularly funded ones, there are 4 others that serve youth and troubled youth in our community and helping them. But basically, the idea behind that is our citizens voted to fund the Children's Trust to support children here in the community. So it just seems like that's a great fit for those organizations to apply for funding from that particular organization, since that is their mission, and I believe that's their only mission. Yeah. So,
and I see there's one on here called Huts for Our Friends. And they just broke out of the gate and wanted $1 million. What I don't see that we've got any money for them. What is Huts for Our Friends? Do you have any idea what that could be?
So they are supporting or their mission is basically to support the homeless initiative here in Escambia County, and that those funds would be used to build something for housing for homeless folks here in the county.
Well, it looks like we need to vet that a little bit further. $1 million ask. Wow. Well, okay. Well, very good. Well, Stefan, I'll tell you what, the budget is not the most, intriguing topic in the world. It's not very sexy, but it's necessary. And I do appreciate you getting up early and joining us on the coffee this morning. I think there's some good information. Again, I would encourage everyone, especially the ones who are very, very cynical, jaded, and suspicious, that think we do things in the dark. We don't. Everything is above board. You have the opportunity to come speak to us at these meetings. As Stefan just mentioned, we'll have one September 6th. We'll have one September 20th. Come down, tell us about it. Meanwhile, go online and have everything. Get every single thing we're looking at. Our budget books, it's all online. Go to myescambia.com. You could see the millage rate we're going to charge. You could see the tax roll, everything. It's all right there. So it's about as transparent as you could get.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I would just, again, comment, Commissioner, the public has access to everything that you guys, the commissioners, get to see. So that same book is up there. The agency list, everything is right there.
Yeah. And so I would encourage folks, especially, again, the ones who are very, very negative and cynical and jaded, suspicious, conspiracy theories, just go online and look at, you've got everything. You've got everything right there that we have. And you can see the work that's been put in. And the final thing I'll say, Stefan, God, it's amazing how quick an hour goes by. The final thing that I'll say is I really appreciate, like everyone said yesterday, it's great to have you back. Everything's very straightforward. You answer the phone. But over the last probably 4 months or so, I've really have had several meetings with you. I've asked you for a lot of information. And I think it's pretty profound that we were able to complete that 3-year deal for the Escambia County Sheriff's Office that really, and of course, we're going to hopefully approve that thing next week, get the interlocal signed. But I just want to publicly thank you for all your time and effort on that. We saw Enrique Diaz yesterday from the Sheriff's Office. We thanked him. And of course, my personal thanks to Sheriff Simmons. I've met with him on a number of occasions and we've kind of hammered this out, but citizens need to know we have a great rapport with the Sheriff's Office, and we're on the cusp of signing a 3-year deal with them so that next year's budget, the following year and the following year, it's plug and play. We've got the numbers already, and we lock it down for this year. And for the county, that gives us it saves us a lot of planning time next year, gives us exactly what we need to have for the following a few years. For the sheriff, it locks down the raises for his men. So I think that's a big deal. Look forward to talking about that a lot more at the meeting when we bring it. But thank you for your help in that, Stefan. I don't think it would have happened if you weren't back in that chair. So appreciate you being back and doing it.
Absolutely. It was my pleasure, Commissioner. And if I could echo what you said, the sheriff and his staff, that's a two-way street. So my conversations with them and working with you, it definitely made it happen. So
right on.
Absolutely.
Right on. All right. Well, appreciate you guys both. Eric, thanks for being here, and Stefan, and we'll see you guys next month at the next Coffee with the Commissioner. Y'all have a great one. See you at 9 o'clock.